Well, hello again, Ricecast family. Welcome back to another episode of the Ricecast. We are recording this as we usually do on a Wednesday, but it is no ordinary Wednesday, Pastor Willie. It's the Wednesday of Holy Week this week.
Yeah, it's such a special week, and so I'm glad we can just maybe even just talk about that a little bit. You know, it's we can try to get all excited about the controversies around, and this, podcast gives us a chance to do that sometimes, talk about things that are happening culturally, politically, internationally. But, there's nothing more important, really any week, but especially this week, than to think about what this week means to us, why it is the center of our faith, the events of this week. This is what our faith is all about. And so it's a very special week.
Very, very special week. If you're following along, if you have the Calvary Church app, the devotions have been coming out on the app. Our social media really taken over. We're all talking about it. But before I get too ahead of myself, remember, this is the Ricecast. We are here in Clearwater, Florida at Calvary Church with the doctor, the pastor, Willie Rice. And excited to talk about this. We've been doing a series as we kind of run up into this called Into the Father's House, which has been a really great series. We'll put a link to that in the podcast description. Any thoughts on the series so far,
It's
Pastor?
been a fun series. We concluded. This was just a 4-part, really preaching through the end of Mark's gospel this final week, but really kind of the hook was to really look at Jesus' interactions in the temple and his statements about the temple, and then I love the way we get to end it on Easter and to talk about the new temple that he's created and how everything changes because of what Jesus did, from the old ideas that were represented in the temple to what Jesus is doing in around the world, really, and in our hearts and lives. So it's going to be a great weekend, and it's been a fun series to teach through.
It is going to be a great weekend. I want to say here in the beginning, we've been saying it as we run up, and as always, you can get all this information at calvary.us. But for us here at the church, our gathering situation is such, things are going to kick off Friday with our Good Friday service here at the Clearwater campus at noon.
Right.
Which that will also be streamed online if you want to join us online. We know some people are working and that type of thing. And it's gonna be a little less than an hour. So if you did it on like a lunch break at 12, you should be able to get it. You should be able to participate. At that
we'll
time.
be done. We it's not one of those long drawn out services. Not that any of our services are long and drawn out, but we take time, obviously, in our worship to do what we need to do. But this is a service really to just gather around the communion table to reflect on Good Friday, the death of Christ, and most based on the gospel accounts. You have Jesus on the cross by around 9 that morning, late morning, at least the act of crucifixion begins. He's on the cross. And the Bible specifically talks about the things that happened between noon and 3 o'clock. And about the time of that, 3 o'clock is when he breathes his last. So you gather at just before noon on Good Friday and to partake of communion, to me, is a very special day. And a lot of people are out of school, but as you said, even if you're working, just bring, maybe grab a quick lunch, a snack or something, and spend the lunch hour with us at Calvary. It's just at our Clearwater campus, and we're doing it at 11 o'clock. Is it 11 o'clock or 12?
It's 12.
12 o'clock.
12
Thank you.
Yep.
It'd be good for me to know that, wouldn't it? So at 12 o'clock, we're gathering, 12 o'clock and noon at Calvary for the Good Friday service.
So that will kind of start things off, and then Saturday evening there is a service here, an Easter service. It'll be just like our Sunday morning Easter services. It's only at the Clearwater campus, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Clearwater is our biggest campus, their biggest auditorium seating situation. So Saturday is a great one. I think we've said this a couple times. If you are somewhere in between strict protocol and totally feeling good, Saturday would be good. It will probably be a lot of space for people to spread out, and we did this whole schedule of services, so there would be space. But Saturday night here at the Clearwater campus.
Yeah, and it's as you said, it's an Easter service.
It's an Easter
and
service.
Most of them are Sunday morning. But a few years ago, we started doing one on Saturday night. There's nothing like Easter Sunday, but by doing Saturday night, sometimes people did have conflicts with other things that were happening on Easter Sunday, family and so forth, and they wanted to go ahead and have their worship on Saturday night. I always kind of justify it and say, well, in the way our Jewish friends reckon time, the day begins at sundown. So, we count it, right? So it's an Easter Sunday service starting, I guess it's a little before sundown. But, we're not Pharisees about this. So Saturday night, but sometimes people did have conflicts, so they needed to travel on Sunday. Another thing that a lot of people did was they came on Saturday just as an act of ministry. It helped free up seats, back in the normal days when you're just jam-packed on Sunday, and it freed up seats on Sunday, so that's helpful. And also people can volunteer then, and so many of our people would come and worship on Saturday, and then Sunday they're actually serving so others can come. So a lot of good reasons to consider Saturday, but only at our Clearwater campus, and then all the rest of them are Sunday morning, but it is all the same service, same music, same energy, same message, and I'll be preaching Saturday night, so it's the same. And then, of course, we have our bevy of services on Sunday morning across all the campuses.
That's right, and we'll go through those quickly. So the strict protocol you've heard us talk about is at 8 o'clock, and that's both at Clearwater and Eastlake. And so strict protocol meaning we're going to ask that masks are worn the entire time by everybody. The minute you walk in the doors, we've been talking a lot this week about how to make that service a very safe environment. This is, of course, for those that are still feeling vulnerable or still feeling tentative about being in groups and those type of things.
Yeah, and I just want to say I know people are feeling better. A lot of people are getting their vaccines. I've had my vaccine, by the way, and I guess we're releasing that publicly a couple weeks ago. No, I think I'm growing hair. I think it's growing some hair. I mean, it's
all kinds of positive.
No, it's all kinds of positive things. And but anyway, now there's a rush on the vaccine.
Yeah,
but anyway, people are feeling better. What I started to say, they're feeling better, and they, numbers are, everybody's trying to be over this.
Yeah,
and yet the strict protocols are. Here's why we're doing this, because I just want you to think about some of our folks who really have been cautious for good reasons. Maybe their health is in a more vulnerable situation, et cetera, and they haven't been to church. I've talked to some that haven't been back in a year. Now, again, we've been having services almost without interruption since September. Without interruption since the first of the year, been safely, people coming back every week. But I understand why some people have been hesitant to come out. So this is a strict protocol service, only mask, and we're going to lovingly enforce that. It's going to be one of those situations where we'll try to remind anyone, you please wear your mask, unless you're on the stage speaking and singing. Wear a mask.
Right.
And if you don't want to do that, there are many other services to come to, and most people don't want to be that confined. But we wanted to create a space for the people that haven't been back, for the people who are very, very careful. Maybe they've only been back once or twice, but we want you to be able to come on Easter Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And I hope you will help us spread the word that, yes, they're going to enforce masks.
Right.
Everyone will have a mask. I think there'll be plenty of room to seat and be distanced. Even the way we're exiting the building, we're going to be very careful so that you can just have the confidence that you can attend church and do it as safely as possible. Even though I think our other services are very safe, but this is for those who are extra cautious. So I'm very excited, and I hope to be able to see some people that we haven't seen in months and months because they're just waiting, till we really get all the way through this, and we love them, and we're looking forward. So help us spread the word on the strict protocol services at 8 at Eastlake and Clearwater.
That's a very important note there, because it is, you might think like, oh, really, that's not for me. Well, there might be somebody. It's a great tool if there's someone in your life or somebody that you know, a neighbor or a friend, coworker that has a family member who's, I think we all know someone who's been just very, very cautious, very tentative still. And this is a great thing to share with them. And it's at Clearwater and Eastlake, 8 o'clock, strict protocol service. And then our layout for the rest of the morning at our Seminole campus, our services are at 9 and 11, and then at Clearwater and Eastlake at 9:30 and 11. and those are 9:30 and 11 will be streamed online on Easter Sunday. So that's the full rundown. Childcare available at those services. You can look online for more information on that.
As you said, it's on our website, so invite somebody. You know, even if you've invited them before, just say, hey, this is your annual invitation.
That's
right. We care about you. Would love to come. Because you never know when will be the one that somebody might take.
Yeah.
And you never know what God's doing in somebody's life. So it's worth just a little bit of risk or a little bit of embarrassment or a little bit of, boy, I don't know how they'll receive that. You know, that's just be gracious, be winsome, be kind, but say, hey, just wanted you to know, the invitation is there.
Yeah.
And would love to have you join us Easter Sunday.
I have to ask before we go past this, because I know we've talked about it in different lengths during the podcast stretch here, but now being just a couple of days out from what looks like we're going to be able to gather on Easter with our church family, I have to ask just for a moment what that means to you. Where are you at? Because we didn't get last Easter. We didn't get to gather in person last Easter. We didn't get to gather in person last Christmas Eve. So many things that have been missed over the last 12 months. What does it mean to you just being a couple days out? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's very exciting because those are key moments. I think there's a reason that we set aside days to celebrate things. Obviously, every Lord's Day is a resurrection day for us.
Yeah.
And, we're celebrating the gospel, the incarnation constantly through the year, not just at Christmas and not just the resurrection at Easter. But there's a reason why you celebrate these days, and particularly Easter Sunday, a resurrection day. It is just the heart of the gospel, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. And so it's such an important time. And to miss it last year was, to me, one of the hardest, most tragic things was to think we're not going to be able to gather with other believers on Easter Sunday. The tomb was still empty. Jesus is Lord. We celebrated, but we all know it isn't the same. And grateful we could do it, but it's not the same. So, to me, this is in a way, it's like, okay, we're getting back to those normal patterns. It's a celebration of sorts. And just to be able to see the people gather again is just something I've been looking forward to for a long. I think you asked me months ago at one point, what are you looking forward to next year? Or and I think I said Easter. Just to be able to do this. So it's going to be a special weekend.
It is going to be a special weekend. We certainly hope you can join us at any of our campuses. If you are, so many of our Canadian friends are. Let me just stop and shout out our Canadian Ricecast friends that I get emails from you.
Yeah.
You're the best. Thank you guys for tuning in. I see you out there.
We love Canadians. We just love our Canadian friends. Yeah,
we do.
Such an important part of our church and community. And many of them are usually down, and some are not this year.
Yeah.
And so we're grateful for them listening to us, and for those who can't be in church, what we just celebrate, we are. But I know friends who still are not gathering yet, and in some states and other places, and many in Canada.
Yeah.
And so we're grateful that they can gather with us by means of technology and online, and so we're grateful they can do that.
Yeah. So we'll see you guys this weekend as well. See you out there on the internets. And it's going to be great. It's going to be a great time. But as we head into this week, I had some questions for you. We're heading into Holy Week. I think one thing I wanted to ask was, for those of us that have maybe been in the faith for a long time, we grew up in the faith, we're been in and around Christianity for a long time. What can you do to not let this week get too familiar? To not go, oh, here we go. Like you said, it's not like we don't talk about the death and resurrection of Jesus on any other day. So I think if you're not careful, there can be a tendency to be like, oh, it's Easter. Yeah. Here we go again. So that's what I wanted to start with. How do we not get too familiar with that?
Well, it's somebody said, what does extraordinary prayer look like? There's a famous definition about when revival comes, it is preceded with extraordinary prayer. Somebody said, well, what is extraordinary prayer? Well, it's prayer that's out of the ordinary. It's like whatever you do a little more, do a little different, change it up. And to me, what does an extraordinary worship experience look like? Well, it's something a little out of the ordinary. It means I'm doing something to just force myself to think more deeply, to contemplate more deeply, more carefully, more reverently than I would otherwise do. What is out of the ordinary for me? And that's what keeps it from being, just, here we go again, another Sunday, another week. I think the Good Friday service, that's extraordinary. We don't do that all the time. So that's an interruption. That's a different thing. But for me during the week, when I teach through the Bible and you teach a story, I like to use what somebody called a sanctified imagination, and I'm careful there. We don't add to or detract from the Word of God,
right?
But you want to get in a situation, and when I'm teaching through stories, a good storyteller can put you in the story.
Yeah.
A good novelist, when you're reading the story, you're there in your mind.
Right.
When it's a tense situation, your heart's racing. When it's you're crying, you're shouting, whatever the situation, they pull you in.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that pulls people in to a novel, to a movie, to a story are the details, the depth of character, the nuance of situations. And that's where, in your imagination, the ability to imagine being in the situation. What did it feel like? What did it look like? What was happening? A few years ago, I really began to get fascinated. I did a series back, it was like back in 2014, on the last days of Jesus. And it really impacted me deeply. It was the Easter series that year. And I spent a couple of weeks on the last days of Jesus. And each message kind of was a deep dive into what was happening on Tuesday, what was happening on Wednesday, what was happening on Thursday.
Oh, fascinating.
And so since then, and our devotionals that we're doing that you mentioned are kind of based off of that. Some of them were pulled from that. And so the devotionals are a great way, but to be extraordinary this week. But I have since then used Holy Week as a week of, okay, what was happening today? What am I? And so I'm using the devotionals, or I'm reading the passages every day. This week I'm reading through the Gospel of John. It's part of my own Bible reading, but I kind of made sure, a couple of weeks ago, I was like, where am I going to be that week? And so I landed it to make sure that I'm literally reading through John's Gospel, and I'll be reading tomorrow and Friday, the days that are germane to that day, especially as you move to the end of the week. So that Easter Sunday morning, I'm reading, the last two chapters. I love doing that because it helps me walk through the week.
Yeah.
So like Wednesday, some people may be listening to this on Wednesday, is the day in which, we think of the Sanhedrin and the religious establishment conspiring to arrest Jesus. They're probably meeting with Judas. They're probably hatching their plan.
Yeah.
When are they going to do this? And I'm thinking about that today. I'm thinking about what Jesus, knew was coming. We're now 48 hours away from the cross, if you're on Wednesday morning. And he knew it was coming. He had said, there's so many places where it's clear he knows what's happening.
Right.
And so what is he thinking? And yet some of his greatest teaching actually comes in the Wednesday, even the Thursday, things that we remember and don't associate with that week. Like, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe it also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it weren't so, I would have told you. And if I go, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you will be also. That's John 14. Well, that happens Thursday. The teaching about the Holy Spirit who's coming and the Comforter. That's all like Wednesday, Thursday stuff.
Oh, wow.
The Olivet Discourse about the end of time and the coming of Jesus happens probably Tuesday, could have happened Wednesday, but it's all going on that week. So to me, to be reading in your Bible, and the devotionals we've been sending out are helping, I think you do that.
Yeah.
And there are other guides online, plenty of guides online that really just reflect what's happening in Holy Week. So for me, it's that. It's an everyday walk through the week, which is why it's so moving together on Friday, and then to kind of be quiet on Saturday, and then to begin celebrating the resurrection of Jesus.
Yeah, I'll put this in the podcast description too. Some of the plans you mentioned, we have all those things, and the Calvary app is where we're putting the devotions out this week. But there's a free Bible app, that the YouVersion Bible app, that has a lot of great plans. Some of them 3-4 day plans, because I don't know when you're listening to this in proximity to Easter. But great looks at that. I love that. I love that because, when you think of Holy Week, it is such an up and down trip to the end, because we start with really this last Sunday of Palm Sunday, and you think about the triumphant entry of Jesus into Jerusalem, and that just where you get in 7 days, right? And if you skip any of the parts, which some of us are prone to do, especially in American culture, we know we like to get to the good part. We like to get to the part where the good guys win or whatever it is. But if you skip the parts of the betrayals that are in there, even the somber silence, I can't help but, we talked about it another time, but I can't help but reflect on for how many people, Good Friday will just probably feel a little different this year because of the death that has surrounded us.
It is true, and you think about not just the suffering of Jesus, but why he suffered, and the suffering that exists in the world today. Suffering is a result of sin. It's a result of a broken, fallen world. And over the last year, many have suffered. Many have suffered not just, first of all, many have died. And many have suffered other things. They have suffered emotionally and financially, and there have been stresses in marriage. And, life is full of suffering. There is pain in our world. And so we think of the brokenness of the world. And I think as you go to this week manifested the brokenness of a culture. Jesus is confronting, these leaders who had missed God. And he doesn't pull any punches, So I think to grieve over the brokenness, it wasn't long ago we did a series last year on Lamentations, and too quickly we forget that laments are in the Bible for a reason.
Oh, yeah.
Because we need a time to lament. We need to pray from a place of pain. The way to handle your pain is not to deny it.
Yeah.
The way to handle your pain is not to pretend it's not there. Let's all sing a happy song and pretend we don't have this great pain.
Yeah.
That's not going to heal pain. I mean, if you are sick today and you had something that was, harming you physically, you don't get better by going, that heart feeling I have, I'm going to deny that. Well, that gets a lot of people in the graveyard prematurely, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying we have to be hypochondriacs, but pain is a gift.
Yeah.
Pain is a gift that forces us to pay attention to something that's wrong.
Something's not
and
right, yeah.
So emotional pain is also a gift. And if you neglect the gift, you fail to really appreciate the severity of sin, the gravity of the brokenness of the world. And so I think as we go to the cross, Easter becomes that much more joyous when we take time to lament the brokenness and the pain in our own lives and in the world around us. Mm-hmm. So as we go through Friday, I think it's not that we're trying to, contrive some emotion. It's just that we stop and we do lament. We grieve the sin that sent Jesus to the cross and the sin that is still present in our lives and in the world around us.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to do, to have a period when we really lament and reflect. And again, American Christians are often like, let's get balloons and talk about Easter, so let's go to the... That means so much more when you understand the significance of his death.
Right.
And so I do think we need to lament.
And the details, I love that you brought that up first, the details of the story that lead up to that. Because I do think when you're in suffering, anyone that's been through any period of suffering knows that there's so many things that go into that. But I think one of the worst is the isolation and the loneliness that you can feel, that no one's suffering like I'm suffering.
Yep.
And I really think, if nothing else, to give yourself the gift of go through some of those details. I mean, we blow by that Jesus is. We don't blow by. I know it's historically, but Jesus is betrayed by one of his closest friends.
Yes, by somebody who's been with him for 3 years, and he knows it's coming.
Right,
and he and he washes his feet on the night.
Right,
and so you linger on that. That's Thursday night. You linger on those things as you think about the coming. So tonight, I think Wednesday night would have been the last night he slept. The last night he rested, probably. Wow. He's probably at in Bethany at Mary Martha's. He's in Bethany. We know that, and he's probably staying there. And but then you think about Thursday. You think about the betrayal. You think about the plots that are going on. You think about the intrigue that's happening in Jerusalem. And I think it just makes it all so much more real when you lean into these moments that happen during Holy Week that lead up to the cross. Sometimes when you explain it, people are like, "Oh, I never saw that happening. Boom, he dies." No, there's this. They've been conspiring for probably a couple of weeks. We know by the time Lazarus is raised from the dead, which may have been just a few weeks before Holy Week. We know that they're like, we've got to stop this guy.
Right.
He's going to get us all in trouble. He's going to, And so they've been plotting. They've been planning. Passover week, was he coming? We weren't sure he's coming. There he comes, triumphal entry. Now he's in the temple. Now he's got crowds around him. When can we get him? We couldn't get him in the middle of the day because he's surrounded by thousands of people who are adoring him.
Right.
It would cause a riot, and that's the last thing they wanted to do is social unrest. So the more you understand the dynamics politically, socially, that are going on, the more this week just becomes this incredible plot of intrigue and suspense. Mm-hmm. It's like if you're watching a scary movie or a dramatic movie, you feel the tension, it's coming,
Yeah.
And that's the way it would have been on Wednesday and Thursday. It's like, as I'm reading through John this week, there's that moment where he says, "Let's go to Jerusalem." And one of the disciples says, "Well, might as well go with him. We'll all die." It's like they knew it's coming.
Yeah.
They it's like they didn't know they were going to die, but they just like, he's just going to walk right in to the people who are after him,
right.
And he's not scared at all. And so that's what's happening this week. And I think the more you think about that and reflect on that, the more it just builds to Sunday.
Sure. Yeah, I think of again, that not a perfect comparison, but I think if you just watch the part of the movie where they score the game-winning touchdown,
there's no fun.
Not that good of a movie.
It's not that good of a movie.
Oh, well, they won. But yeah, even just the mix of emotions there. I was thinking as we've been through this series with the temple, and I didn't look this up before we started recording, but there's a moment where Jesus weeps over Jerusalem, isn't there?
Yeah, as he's coming in, and that precedes coming in, and he's reflecting on Jerusalem. It's really before that week, but he's reflecting on it as he goes. Like, I would have gathered you like a mother hen would gather her chicks, but no, you wouldn't let me.
Yeah, and I love those details in the story because, again, you can just sort of get this. It's sort of fun to picture. We talked about on the podcast this righteous indignation of turning over tables and stuff. But when you layer that with the nuance of a detail of he was brought to tears over this city.
Yeah.
There's so much going on in this week and in this run up. It's a great thing to do this year is to just really get in there with the story.
So use our devotionals, or even if you haven't yet, start reading. Pick one of the Gospels, and you can everything that's happening. Last week, go to the triumphal entry. At least with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that's easy. And there are different chapters in those. But Mark 11, it's a Mark. But usually about the last third of the book is the last week of Jesus' life. In John, it's about half the book. So again, that shows you how the gospel writers view this. Again, let me say that again. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's about a third of the book is the last week in each one of those biographies. So Mark has 16 chapters, for instance. It's Mark 11 that is the triumphal entry. So everything from Mark 11 to Mark 16 is the last week, Sunday to Sunday. So Mark 1 through 10 is 3 years. Mark 11 through 16, 7 days.
Yeah.
So go and just dive in there and read some this week. You can do that just reading a chapter or two a day. It's not hard. And just let your heart and mind go into the events of that week and feel what's happening. Reflect on what's happening. To me, that's what makes it so extraordinary.
Yeah. And I really think, we know people go through hard seasons. It's been such a hard year. It could be a great exercise in
it really could.
In just this is the God that we're talking about. You feel alone and abandoned. I mean, Jesus is even after he's betrayed, everyone leaves. They take off and run. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many details in this story.
It's one of the great things about what we understand about God is revealed in Christ. We have a God who actually suffers.
Right.
Who has suffered on our behalf.
Right.
We have a God who has suffered for us through his son Christ. And so he is not unacquainted with our griefs and our sorrows. And so if you have struggled, if you are full of grief, if you have sorrowed, again, the way to healing is not to ignore it. I can't emphasize that enough. And it's one of those things that grieves me in another way, because when I see people trying to deal with grief that way, I just want to stop and say, no, that isn't going to work.
Yeah.
That isn't going to work. I understand why you don't want to talk about the pain, but it isn't going to do anything for you. It's not going to get you where you want to. It's, you need to grieve. You need to lament. The world is broken in some serious ways. Our lives are broken. And when we reflect upon that this week, then when we come to Easter Sunday, it's a reminder that Jesus overcomes the brokenness. And that is the source of our hope. It isn't that there is no brokenness. It's that I serve a Savior who, in the end, will triumph over all this brokenness. It isn't that there's no more death.
Right.
We don't walk around going, there's no more death.
Right.
I don't know. I did a funeral the other day.
Yeah.
Believe me, there's still death.
Yeah.
The funeral home is still in business, just in case anyone's wondering. There's still death.
Yeah.
And it stings.
Yeah.
Don't go around and say, death doesn't sting anymore. That's not what 1 Corinthians 15 means. Death still stings.
Yeah.
You lose a loved one, and you tell me it doesn't sting, then you're either not being honest or something's just wrong with you.
Right.
It stings.
Yeah.
Right? So we acknowledge the sting, but then we say, because of Easter, Jesus is alive.
Yeah.
I have hope that death cannot take away. And he talks about when death is finally swallowed. He's talking about the return of Jesus in 1 Corinthians 15. And that's when he says, and death is swallowed up in victory. Grave, where is your victory? Death, where's your sting? We know that's going to happen. We have hope because of Easter.
Yeah.
And I just don't think we appreciate it enough if we don't walk through the breadth of this week, which, as you said, is a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
If you thought the climax was the triumphal entry, no, that was just the opening chapter.
Right.
And that was just the beginning of the week. And oh my, the brokenness of the world is seen in the death, betrayal, death, and burial of the Lord Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, even as we're talking about this, more and more details are coming to mind. And I just think it provides an even fuller and more beautiful picture of the things that are defeated there. You know, you talked some this weekend about just the vitriol and the hate for Jesus, even as he's hanging on the cross and they're mocking him.
You see it now.
I was thinking some about the scene with Mary, and where he says she lost a son. Tell me that's not something somebody can relate to out there. And he says, here's your woman, here's your son, here's your mother, with John and Mary. There's a detail. There's so many good details in here. And the best news of all, as you just said, that the loneliness, the betrayal, the hatred, the brokenness, that's not the end.
Yep.
But if you really take a second to see all those things that were defeated and overcome that day, boy, what an even better celebration Easter becomes.
It's almost like if you can at some point in this week shed a tear, and I know people respond emotionally differently, but if you can shed a tear over the brokenness of the world or the sacrifice of Jesus, then you're more likely to shed a tear of absolute joy and euphoria on Sunday morning.
Right.
And if you just run past the cross and the pain and the brokenness, then Easter, you don't really appreciate the victory as much. So I hope you'll take some time to really reflect as we move toward Friday, which is why Good Friday service is so important. We used to do that on Sunday night, which is nice, and in some ways was easier for people to come. But we just a couple years ago thought, we need to do it on Good Friday.
Yeah.
And I think we've only done that once or twice, and it was a great crowd last time we did it, a good turnout. So I think Friday will be significant again. And just hope you take time, think about the death, so you can celebrate the hope that Jesus brings.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say this too, just because I know our team has mentioned it a lot, but we do know a lot of the kids a lot of the schools are off that day. And if you can bring your family to that service too. I mean, I think it's not easier, but Easter Sunday feels so like, you might want to sit with your family, right? But yeah, that's a good way to start that conversation early.
It really is. And again, it's a very compact service. It's not a long sermon.
Yeah.
I don't go into a long presentation. It really is and we're doing some great traditional hymns because it just seems like it's so appropriate there. And there's nothing better than some of those great songs. I tell them every time, you've got to sing "When I Survey the Wondrous Cross." It's my favorite hymn, by the way, if you ever get asked in a trivia competition. When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. And just to me, the lyrics are so powerful. But some of the other songs we're singing, it'll be a special moment. Yeah. And I think you will enjoy it if you're able to come or watch online.
Yeah. Good Friday, the Saturday night service, all the Sunday morning service, all the information again available, calvary.us. It's right on the homepage. You can get all the information there. And we are really looking forward to it, as you can probably tell from our chat today. Our whole team is looking forward to it. There's a buzz amongst the whole staff. We're just excited to get to celebrate Easter with everybody this year. So we look forward to seeing you this weekend.
Absolutely.